You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with The Wedding Biz, a podcast that provides both education and inspiration for those of us in or interested in the weddings and event industry. If you missed last week's episode, it was a really great conversation with Lori Ahrens of Lori Ahrens Special Events. Today's guest is Sean Lowe. Sean's consulting firm, The Business of Being Creative, is focused on providing practical advice to those in the business of being creative. Sean's client list includes the who's who of the wedding industry and design community. He is also the host of a very informative podcast with the Wedding Biz Network called The Business of Being Creative. Enjoy this conversation with Sean Lowe. Sean, it's been a bit since you've been on the show, but you've been on a lot of times, so it's been a little while. It's going to be good to catch up.
Oh, I can't wait.
So tell me, here we are, we're recording at the very end of April, 2022. And so the pandemic has been for a little over 2 years. It seems like it's calming down. Do you feel that you've changed personally in any ways as a result of this whole experience?
Well, who couldn't? That you have to be changed. I think that for me personally, it's been really a retrenchment, right? And trying to, in some ways, just get through and find my way to the other side. But also from the business side, it's really, I've been very much an opportunist when it comes to the pandemic. I've thought that, for me, what I do in trying to consult with creative businesses is to really tap into the kind of the emotional relationship that exists between art and a patron. And for me, that it'll always be that way, right? So it doesn't really matter whether it's a wedding or if it's, interior design or whatever it might be. So for me, the way I've changed is I've just really come to understand the importance of that relationship and the importance of identity and what the journey looks like, right? Because I think that's become so profound because of COVID, because of not having access to it for so long and now having access once again. What does that mean? And so, it's really, really changed me and the way that I go about what it is I'm doing. If anything, it made me double down on things that I really care about, which has been really refreshing. It's been eye-opening for me about how much further I can take the value of relationship than even I had done before COVID.
But how so? What do you mean by that?
Oh, digging in deeper into idiosyncrasies of the way people operate and the way that they need to be related to. And so that there's just really profound alignment between the artist and their patron, right? Because it's not just about creating art at the end of the day. It's about that journey to the art. And so, but that journey is fraught, and the journey looks more like a trip through Wonderland, when it comes to design than it does, for, at least in my mind anyway, than it does for like, hey, this straight line path up a hill, if you will. Right. So that thing that's so irrational, so profound is like, can you put teeth to that? Can you put teeth to the very thing that is irrational and just get paid for it and say, hey, I need to go and have these kind of meetings. Maybe we need to present color, and then we need to present food, and then we need to present music, and someone else might do exactly the opposite, and really digging in as to all that might mean, and getting paid, not just dollars, but decisions too about that, right? And so that's just become a better way for people to tell who it is that they're buying, right? And so, a really great way for me to talk about that too is like you've interviewed so many luminaries over the years, Andy, that I really love it. But what's so fascinating to me, being so close to the industry as I am, is that I know really what a Brian Raffinelli wedding looks like. I know what a Marcy wedding looks like. I know what, and I also know what they feel like and what they're all about, and on with all the luminaries what David Mon does, what David Stark does, all the people that you've interviewed so well. And what I have to say about the industry is what the rest, those that are not in the industry don't really know, right? So they don't know the ethos of what or the heartbeat or whatever you might want to put behind that of a Brian event or a Marcy event. We're not really good at that, right? So we're good at showing the pretty, we're good at showing what could happen in the end, but we're not good at what's the heartbeat of it all.
Oh, I get you. Yeah, like just the heart and soul of it. What's really behind all of that, as opposed to just what's on the surface.
Yeah, if you feel like fashions has always done it and has been brilliant about it. If I, name a fashion house or fashion designer, you would really get what they stand for as an artist. What they stand for as a human being is a whole other thing, but what they stand for as an artist, I think, is really known. But in the wedding industry, it just isn't.
You know what's interesting that I'm thinking of? It's a little bit of a tangent, but the way you're talking is making me think of it is before the pandemic, of course, I mean, one aspect of what's behind it all in the heart and soul is our connection with our clients, right? Before the pandemic, I mean, I would connect. I mean, you and I have talked about this many times. I mean, that was really important to have that personal connection and like heart to heart. Somehow for me, it's gone even deeper because of the pandemic. And I think it's because by being isolated, for so long and slowing down, having that big slowdown, especially the beginning of the pandemic for the first 3 months. I mean, to really, I'll speak for myself. I was just really pondering what is it that's really meaningful to me and what isn't. And, if I could change things, what could I change? And it's a little hard for me to verbalize, but now that we've been through 2 years, I am even more interested in connecting with my clients and really having a human, like feeling even more than ever before, feeling like we're becoming friends and that I can really understand where they're coming from so that, I mean, now to translate this into the more surface stuff, so that I could then custom design an experience for them that's really going to touch them and really going to move them. So it's become more profound to me over this time period.
I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. And I think, honestly, that's the future of the business. I think that what we really did experience too was the idea that if all I want you to do is get to yes, then, maybe you'll get that done, but it's not going to be as fulfilling. It's not going to be nearly as fulfilling as trying to create something that's just going to be like eye-opening for everybody and really fun to go down the road, right? I think that ironically, because COVID was such a miserable experience and the after effects have been really not very pleasant, is that it really got me focused on why do you do this? Why you do this is you don't do this to make something pretty. You don't do this to make something beautiful. You do something because it's transformative. And that transformation, as I've said it a lot, but I really have come to even embody it more. It's like you do there to like this belly full of joy, right? That's why you're there. Right. So you're in the happy business, except it's not just happy, it's the joy business. I think that's really what's been quite amazing for me.
Yeah. So what are some of the current issues that you're experiencing with consulting clients, who are in the weddings and event industry? Is there any like common theme given where we're at in the world or that you're finding with people?
Yeah, I think clients are holding businesses accountable for in a way that they never have before. And I think that where we used to be able to get away with kind of a vagary of definition, something irrational and then rational, I think we don't have that opportunity anymore. I think it's not about the amount of money someone's paying. I guess that's always somewhat true, but it's less about the amount and more about the certainty, right? The certainty of what I have to spend for goods and services and the certainty what I have to spend to engage the vendor to do and provide those goods and services or manage them. So to be specific, so I'm not cryptic about that, is like, let's say a planner pre-pandemic would charge, maybe a small engagement fee, but then make most of their money, charge 15 or 17% of a wedding, right? Okay.
Right.
Well, that got understood. It did do a lot of things to elevate, planners and show their value and get that. But then, post-pandemic, what it's done is saying, well, what is that money really going for, right? Because does it really take 18% of a budget for you to produce this over the time it takes? Is that the right number? or does that number represent other things, right? So if that number represents, if you only charge me, let's call it $5,000 for an engagement fee, but then it's just to be outrageous about it, it's $1 million wedding, and I got $180,000. Charge 18%. I know in order to do that $1 million wedding, okay, wonderful, fantastic. So does it mean to tell me that $180,000 is what you needed to produce this wedding, as opposed to have a vision for what it's going to be? That's not true, right? It isn't true even close, right? What you imagined it to be is worth more than $5,000. And my point is, like, that 17% now has to embody the idea of, well, it's both, right? So it's both my creative force and also my production, the physicality it takes to make it happen, right? And pre-pandemic, clients are like, okay, I'll deal with that. It's not that big a deal. Post-pandemic, they're like, yeah, that's not good. Like, I'm not going to talk about that because I'll pay you to produce it, I'll pay you to design it, but I'm not going to guess at which one's which. And so I've had a lot of clients that have been experiencing just really bad relationships with their clients, in the sense that clients that don't feel like they understand what they're paying for, they try to assign value as to what things are worth. So they'll tell you what they think design is worth, as in nothing, right? And they'll say the production's not going to be that, so that they become, not only do they become harsh about what they're actually going to pay, but they are also determine how things go. Well, I don't really want to talk about design now because I'm not paying for that now. I'm paying for production now, so I want you to book in all my vendors, let's call it, right? Well, we're not there yet. Right. So that would be just one example. Obviously, just planners. We're talking about much, much broader businesses than that, but the same ethos is underneath. If you don't have clarity as to what it is you're doing and which component of your business is irrational and which component of your business is rational, which is true for every creative business and especially wedding business, right? And what I mean by irrational is not insanity or anything like that. What I mean by irrational is that the way you do it, right, is completely different from the way somebody else does it, and you're both equally effective. Like, for instance, so like your business, Andy, you may say, hey, the first thing I want to do is really, chart out the flow of the evening, kind of the tenor of music. And once I get that, I go to choreo. Once I go to choreo, I'm going to go to song list, right? You could easily say that it would be backwards. They start with the song list, and then maybe you figure out some choreography, and maybe if you're going to be, you might even do some costuming and set decor, that's stage decor. Okay, great. The way you do it, right, is going to be completely different than the way some of your competitors might do it. Both of you are going to be powerfully successful.
Right.
It's just the idea that you're going to be able to arrive, with success in a completely different way. So perhaps the way that you charge, right, would be different than the way someone else would charge based on the way that they do it, right? Maybe you charge a huge amount of money to figure out, I don't know, costuming, right? Because that's the most important thing for you. And maybe they charge a huge amount of money to figure out song list. I mean, I'm being very cryptic, but not that much, right? Because there is this definition of what is irrational. The issue becomes, if I have this standard way of charging, the standard way of doing something, it doesn't permit the irrational to be irrational, which is I have to do it this way because this is the way I love to do it, which I understand and appreciate that is not the way someone else wants to do it, right? And so then you then try to lump in something that's rational. Oh, that's because it takes us so long to do it, or because, we need, this many staff to do it, or whatever, right? It becomes this idea. It's like, okay, well, what am I paying for? Am I paying for the irrational creative juices that go into things, or am I paying for the logical, rational thing that I have? And when you put the two together, 99 times out of 100, for somebody who really doesn't understand the irrational, which all of your clients don't, right? And then they're not going to pay for that. Right? They're only going to understand it in terms of the rational, and then the value of the irrational goes away, and then the value of the beauty of the business as being idiosyncratic goes away, and we just trend back to the mean. And I think that that's the big resistance, because I don't see a lot of wedding business professionals coming out and saying, wait a second, I just got in touch with what you got in touch with, Andy, which is the depth of relationship, the importance of that thing where we become friends, where we do these things and I guide you to this better experience, and then pair it with changes in your business. I just don't see that, right? And so we've kept the business model the same, while at the same time you want to get paid for something different. So those two things can't coexist. And when they stay the same and clients start to pick up on that more and more and more, which they have, they're just going to rail about it more and more and more. And so I've seen a lot of really problematic experiences, not just because of COVID, not just because of supply chain, because there's like this mismatch in the way the value of the business is connoted and the way that the wedding business wants to be paid and the way that the artist wants to be paid, right? Those two things don't match and they become problematic. The business fights the creative business, so owner.
I remember, this is when I first met you. I remember the way I would sell the bands, because I'm in the band business, was based on like everyone else in the band business. This band is X price and this other band is B price and so on and so forth. And I remember you talking to me about how I really got to change the way my prospective clients and clients view this in that I'm designing an experience. Set aside the band. And I remember you talking about, charging a design fee, even in the music business, and how it took me so long it was months, took me a while to understand that. And then finally, I went through a period of time where I might have been, probably was the only musician around charging a design fee versus a price for the band. But I had trouble. I ended up having clients who accepted it and paid that way. And even today, sometimes I still have that. As you know, Sean, like I don't want to be too specific, but I've done some destination weddings recently where I charge a design fee plus fees for the band, but I am actually charging a design fee as a musician, and which is similar to a planner. And why not? Although for the most part, clients do tend to, they get into one vertical in a business, like the band business, and they say, well, so-and-so charges like this, and so-and-so, they all charge like this. What are you talking about, a design fee? And I find it's I don't want to say higher end, I don't want to call it that, but in a sense, it is the higher end client who gets it. They get it the most. They understand it the most.
Well, and I think there's also, but since we've really been talking, like, we introduced that together, and it was kind of out of the outlier. I see more and more bands charging these kind of creative fees.
Oh, do you see that?
Tons. I see tons of those bands doing that. I see, lots and lots and lots of caterers, right? Even the ones that are not necessarily serving, that the highest luxury end are charging creative fees because it is so creative, right? The presentation of food, the delivery of food is just as important as what the food tastes like, right? So I see lots and lots of caterers charging creative fees. A lot more and more people are legitimizing the value of creative. And, not in the wedding industry, a business that literally came out of COVID in the interior design space is like, you can talk to a named designer. It's called theexpert.com. And you pay something like, it's as much as $3,500 for 50 minutes, right? For just that consultation, which to me validates the reason I bring that into this conversation is because it validates the value of creative. If you're going to pay $1,500 an hour to talk to a name interior designer, it shows you the value of their creative mind, right? So I think that's, it's in the air. It's what COVID has drawn into is I believe you're capable of doing the work, but I want to know what's inside your head. Right? And I'm willing to pay for it.
I want to make sure that you're aware of two other shows that are on the Wedding Biz Network. First, The Business of Being Creative, hosted by founder and president of The Business of Being Creative, Sean Lowe. Sean's consulting firm is focused on providing practical advice to those in the business of being creative. Tune in every Tuesday to hear a new episode chock full of topics and advice for creative businesses. Also, check out the 2 seasons of Stop and Smell the Roses, hosted by the one and only lifestyle and event design expert, Preston Bailey. Preston speaks with such an honest voice. I know you're going to thoroughly enjoy hearing him on this unique platform. You can find both shows at theweddingbiznetwork.com or on your cell phone's podcast app for both The Business of Being Creative and Stop and Smell the Roses. We had a conversation recently, you and I, off the air, in which you mentioned how you love the idea of radical choice. Can you say more about what you mean by that phrase?
Yeah. I mean, I think that more and more and more, it's going to be binary as to whether or not someone's going to choose you and what you're about. And I think that radical choice is very much about understanding that you're not for everybody and that the ones that you're going to be working with really expect so much of you, and the expectation is so high on both sides that it becomes a radical choice for a client to choose to work with you and for you to choose to work with a client. And so the expectations are really high in that the investment becomes really high on both sides, and that there's no apology for it, just an expectation that there can be something great. And in that way, the irony of it is what radical choice requires is uncomfortability. It requires pushing the boundaries of what is known so that you get opportunities to go further than you otherwise would.
Yes, create opportunities, really.
You do.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is a lot of business models, for instance, to attack the percentage model once again, so sorry, but I have to, that presumes the more money you spend, the more money that the planner or whoever's charging percentage makes.
Yeah, right.
But what it also presumes is that if you don't make the sale, you don't get any money. So if you're not able to sell the success of that wedding, you're not going to do the wedding. And most people wouldn't leave. But if you're really hoping for that $1 million wedding and it turns out to be a $200,000 wedding, which is still remarkable and great, but if you're making a percentage, we can't get there from here. So what you then have to be doing is trying to strike the balance between getting what a client is going to say yes to, because otherwise you're not going to get a whole bunch of money, right? If they don't buy what you're selling, you're not getting money, as opposed to really being agnostic to price, not caring what they spend, other than having to spend what you need them to spend in order to do what you do, so that you can make them uncomfortable. You can show them things that they may not want to have, but it gets them to be in that uncomfortability, gets them to move further than they otherwise would, because you're trying to expose them to opportunities that they might not have considered, different kinds of, and you can think of anything. And so to boil it down, if what you want is to basically do things as an artist that gets them to 15, right? But your model, because you get it paid on a percentage, means you'll never show them anything other than 10, right? You'll never get to 15, as opposed to if you get paid no matter what, right? You got paid your design fee, you got paid your creative, your production fee, whatever that might be, and that happens no matter what, right? Then you're free to say, hey, let's go to 17, right? Knowing full well you're going to make somebody uncomfortable, and you can always dial it down to 15, right? But then you're at 15. That's the example. And so what I mean by radical choice is figuring out how to do that, both as a business, as an artist. And so it blows up the whole notion that we create easy, stress-free, it's all pleasant, la, 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 right? When it really is about getting you to stretch, right? And really about getting you to see something other and to do things that are really iconic to you, the client, and iconic to you, the artist, together, so that you're able to do these really profound things. And I know, Andy, you do that a lot, right? You push clients to say, hey, here's what this could be, right? And maybe they don't want it, but that's the whole point of the design fee, is you're able to then take them further. And then when they come back a little bit, they have something that's more profound, right? And it always gets back to the bird story for me. So I'm very much about that. What I mean by the bird story is that,
yeah, I was going to ask.
Bird stories are a fun one. It's my most favorite story. I'm not an artist at all, so this is just a metaphor. It may or may not be true, but you can imagine a little kid coming to the artist and saying, "Hey, I'm drawing a house, and can you show me how to draw clouds?" Right? Because that when I see the sky big, my house will look great, and that'll be awesome. And I want you to help me draw clouds. And you have a choice as an artist to know that, you know what? They don't want me to draw clouds. What they really want me to do is teach them how to draw birds, right? Because if they were able to see the birds, then they would see the sky in a way that they never could have imagined for themselves. But if they could have imagined it, then that's exactly what they would have imagined, right? So literally by showing them how to draw birds, they get to see a world that they, quite frankly, could never have imagined for themselves. And by doing so, they are transformed, right? Because now the world is bigger than they could have imagined. So the question is as a business, how do you get permission to draw birds, right? And when you do, their world will be forever changed.
Right.
I love that notion,
Yep,
because I love the idea of expansiveness and the willingness to create trust, so much so that you can take what you have a gift for, which is to see the world the way that you do, and give that gift to your clients so that they can be empowered in a way they never could have without you, right? And that deals for everything, whether you're a planner, a photographer, musician, makes no difference. Caterer, makes no difference. How do I push you beyond your own understanding of the world, beyond clouds, so that you can see birds? And when you see birds, you're forever changed.
Right. I love that. So, Sean, if for people listening, if someone wants to hire you, what are the different ways? I mean, do you still have the collective? You got the one-on-one?
I do. I have 3 ways. So I do one-on-one work, and that's either as a mentor, right, where you talk to me every now and again. Some people talk to me, every 3 weeks religiously, and other people talk to me twice a year, which is great. And then I have my retainer business where I talk to someone every single week for at least an hour and a half, and then usually every single day, just in a quick conversation, because the goal is to upend things, and I call that my retainer business. And we go for at least 4 months, and if we renew, it's for another 4 months. And then I have my collective, the BBC Collective, which is we're about 13 people. I'm never going to let it be more than 20. I've had it as high as 18, and that's about as much as I want, right? It's because it's really about just a deep dive. We have a call that I record, a Zoom call we record every single week. And what we're doing this year, which is really, really fun, which is a little bit different. I've been doing it for, I can't believe it. This is the 5th year I've been doing it, is that we're deep diving into every single business. So as if I was to onboard a mentoring client or a retainer client, I have a questionnaire. They share a really deep, intimate details about their business. And we go through that. We have a call, an hour and a half long call, and we deep dive into their business and talk about everything that they're doing, their contract and all that. And you get this kind of 360 view of your business.
I love that. That's great.
It's really good. It's really fun. And I'm just so proud of, we have a lot of people that have been in the group I have, a couple of members have been in the group for like 4 years, right? So they've heard me rattle on about everything. And so they've embodied a lot of what we've talked about. And I have no interest in I'm hugely opinionated, as everyone knows, but I'm uninvested in being right. So it's really about this really powerful dialogue. And we have, all walks. We have DJs, and we have planners and florists and musicians and photographers. I mean, it's just such a great group.
Yeah, this reminds me, I used to be in a group therapy situation where there would be 6 to 8 of us with a male and a female therapist, kind of co-therapist. And it was the most powerful. I mean, it's one thing getting individual help, which is very powerful. I had that with you, still have that with you for God knows how long. But in terms of that group situation, I found it so beneficial to be able to share, but to hear how other people, if we use the phrase pain points, to hear what they are, and that there's a lot of similarity between us. And I felt so supported. And so I really love the whole concept of the collective in addition to the mentorship. So
yeah, it's really great.
Well, cool, Sean. Well, as usual, this is always a blast. And I mentioned in the introduction about your weekly show, your podcast, The Business of Being Creative. Every Tuesday, a new episode comes out.
Hosted by your network.
Yeah.
I freaking love it.
That's right.
You've done a great job. I'm really, really proud of it.
Well, you're the one who's hosting and you're doing all the work. So I encourage everyone to check it out. So anyway, Sean, well, thanks again for being on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
All right. Take care. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Sean Lowe. You can check out his website at thebusinessofbeingcreative.com. On social media, his handle is SeanLowe1, the numeral 1. And you can get all of this in the show notes in your cell phone's podcast app or at our website of theweddingbiz.com. And next week, I'm not going to have a guest since it's Memorial Day, so I'm going to take a day off. Hopefully, it'll give you a chance to catch up on the over 400 past interviews on the show. And we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.